Hey, everybody. I would like to welcome everybody to today's webinar, Communicating Your Story. The segment is Blogging Basics. We did have another Blogging Basics webinar a few weeks ago, so we might not see as many people online today, but we're really, really happy that you're with us. Today's presenters are Rose Hayden-Smith, Cooperative Extension Advisor, and Cynthia Kintai, Director of Marketing at A&R. Rose is going to go ahead and start by also offering to you what is coming up under the theme of communicating your story, as well as share about A&R Winter School, which will take place in the beginning of February. So with that, Rose and Cynthia, welcome. Thanks, Jody.
Thanks, Jody. And I really want to thank Jody for organizing all of these webinars. And I want to thank Cynthia especially for being partnering today on this particular webinar, because she has a fantastic knowledge about blogging. So this is Communicating Your A&R Story, and it's part of a larger series because communicating our stories as researchers and educators is essential. And increasingly, this involves digital technologies. And so we've developed a series of webinars, and some of them are already archived, but we'll be offering them again live in the future. And we have some other things online for you. But you'll learn about tools and social platforms that you can use to advance your work in extension delivery. We just did a webinar last week on LinkedIn, and that's archived. We'll certainly do that one again. And that would be a good one actually to look back to, because we actually talk about blogging pretty extensively in the LinkedIn webinar, because they have a publishing platform. We've got an Instagram webinar coming up with partnering with Dan Macon. Facebook on the 31st of January, and then an A&R Winter School, February 4th through 8th, which is going to be a half-hour webinar daily about creating a communication strategy, along with office hours in the afternoon, to help you sort of work through it so that by the end of the week, you'd have a basic communication strategy for your program. So this today is part of the A&R, what we're calling the educational pipeline. And the A&R website is undergoing a refresh. And there's going to be a new place on the A&R website for you to publish blog posts. You don't have to have a blog platform or a regular blog. It could be a one-off. We hope it won't be a one-off, but it could be. But there will be a new place on the main landing page of the A&R website for your blog post to appear. And we want and need your blog post. The process will be for you to write blog post. I'm available if you need ideas or need some help with suggestions for editing. I can help you with that. And then they will be submitted via a survey form to the Strategic Communications Group, and you'll include a picture, and we've got guidelines that are available. And then it will get published on the A&R website if it's accepted. So again, Module 1, Blogging Basics with Rose and Cynthia. So a big fundamental question is, why blog? I'm an avid blogger. I've been blogging about my A&R program and my research for 10 years. In fact, my first blog post for A&R was in January 2009, and I created a blog called the UC A&R Victory Grower, and then I later added a WordPress blog by that name, and the last few years I've been blogging as the UC Food Observer, which was for the UC Office of the President, but it's now an A&R brand. And one of the reasons that I started blogging was to share knowledge and help other people and give them ideas. You know, particularly for me, it was in the realm of gardening. So to teach and extension delivery, you're with A&R, you're an educator, you know a lot. You have a lot of information that you can share. Blogs are also a great way to share your research and your findings with broader and maybe new audiences. And it's not like a peer-reviewed publication where you have to have everything done or that complete body of work. You could actually share preliminary findings. So another reason to blog would be to engage, educate, persuade. Maybe, behavioral change. That could be for industry. It could be media, legislators, advocates, to establish expertise by extending knowledge on a single topic over time and increase your visibility. And that was the model I used with the Victory Grower, where I established expertise, basically in the area of school, home, and community gardens. And blogging is also a really good way for us in A&R to improve science literacy. And that's a really important thing for all of us to be focusing on right now, is how we provide good, factual, science-based information to a range of audiences on social media and in popular places to sort of counteract information that's maybe misinformation. So a better question may be, are you missing out on opportunities by not starting a blogging practice? So what seems to stymie people in any writing project is, what should I write about? And I think that that's a fair question. So new information is always something that you can write about. And remember, these blog posts are short. They might be 5 to 7 paragraphs with some hyperlinks and a good image. So you don't need a huge body of research that you can write about. Just pick like one thing. Could be one piece of new information, a new research finding, and why does it matter? Do you have any policy recommendations? You could also use a blog post as a place to expand on previous findings that you've already written about. So, other things to write about. What are the implications of your work in a larger context? So one of the things that I see right now where A&R is getting a lot of traction in media is around work in fire science, wildfire, climate change, and what these incredibly talented A&R people like Max Moritz and Faith Kearns and Susie Kosher and a bunch of other people are doing is they're taking the larger news about, climate change and wildfire and FEMA funding and things like that. And they're embedding their research in that. So maybe they're linking to a Rolling Stone article, but then locating their research in there. It's really effective. So what are the implications of your work in the larger context of what's going on in the world? You'll find something. I know it. What are you studying next? People are really interested in knowing what the additional questions are that you might be researching. And again, connect your work to what's in the news and popular culture. So there are even more things to write about. I think it's really important to write about what you know. And I think one of the things that's a sword that cuts two ways with people in extension is that the more we know, the more we feel we don't know. And, but you really know a lot. And if it's a step-by-step thing, if it's a process, write about what you're doing. You could include short videos or images. Some of the most effective blog posts that I've seen in A&R have been things like around food preservation, where they're actually showing steps and they'll show like an image or a video and then have some text. Very effective. And again, it doesn't have to be long. People love posts from the field, especially with images. If you're an extension advisor or specialist, or a postdoc who's out in the field doing, something like an insect count, or maybe you're looking at a trial. Write about that. People love it. They want to see what you're doing. You could also do a Q&A with another person, and that's something that I do a lot at the UC Food Observer. Is I get worried about people getting bored hearing from me, so I'll find an expert or a colleague and do a Q&A with them. So there are even more things to write about. What I do occasionally, and these are pretty popular, is I share what I'm reading, listening to, particularly podcasts, because I love podcasts, or what I'm watching, and I explain why. And the benefit of doing a blog post like that is that you can also hyperlink to the author of the book or the creator of the podcast that you're listening to, and share that with them, and then you might get additional shares on social media of that blog post. You could also pose a question and use the answers for a future blog post. One of the most popular blog posts that I ever did was based on, I was teaching like offering a seminar, but I only had 20 minutes to do a quick talk to high school students about the food system. And I was really stymied. What is the most important thing to communicate in 20 minutes? So what I did was I put a question on my Facebook page, and I had dozens and dozens and dozens of responses from people. And so what I did was I actually made a blog post featuring all the responses that I got. And so that was a really effective blog post. But above all, try to provide accurate information that's useful and will help other people in their work or in their lives. So finding material for blogs, I guarantee you, you don't have to start from scratch. You already have material on your computer or sitting on your desk. You can adapt things. You may have a UC Delivers that you've written that could be adapted. You've probably got material from newsletters. Again, research findings. Maybe you have fact sheets. You can take some of these things and just take a couple of paragraphs and start working it around, and you'll have a blog. So my blogging goals are pretty simple. I try to teach something in each blog. I usually try for one, maybe two key points per post, because these are really short. These are a handful of paragraphs. So just like one key point is good. And then I also try to provide a new or an enhanced understanding of a topic. So think about how you're going to engage with people that might be reading your blog post. A blog is not equal to a research publication. It needs to be a more sort of single focus, one point, and it needs to be much more simple in its language and its approach. Make it easy to share. Test your work. So read it aloud even, and that's something I do with my work a lot, is I read it aloud. And I ask myself, could someone who is reading this summarize it easily in a sentence? And if they could, by the way, that's your tweet about your blog post. So blogging is interesting, and don't feel like if you're not blogging that you have to start a regular blog. Just write something. Start somewhere. Start now. This summer I took a writing class, and even for people who write a lot, writer's block is a real thing. And what this incredibly accomplished writer told me was that there's no muse, and he is from Northern England. So what he said, there is only your arse in the chair with a great accent. So start somewhere. Start now. Make it your New Year's goal. You do need a narrative or a storyline, but usually that will sort of develop. And what you might do is you might sort of construct the blog and then go through afterwards and sort of make the story through the opening sentence in each paragraph so that it weaves together. Be conversational and be yourself. So, what makes a good blog post? And we're going to look at some blog posts and some headlines in particular in a little bit. So, a good blog post usually has a really good headline, usually less than 10 words. It's got a strong lead, and that's not a misspelling. That's actually how you spell lead. And the strong lead is what a lead is that's like your opening, right? So you really want a strong 3 or 4 sentences. A blog post can be pretty short. It can be 500 to 750 words. I will tell you that for longer posts, like 1,250 words, they're definitely a reader base for that. But I think if you're sort of starting a blogging practice, it's more manageable maybe to do a shorter post. Make sure you have good visuals. And again, be authentic. Use your voice. So a good headline is descriptive. So Lynn Sosnowski, who's a weed scientist with A&R, this is sort of a proposed headline for a blog that she's got in the works, which I think is pretty clever. It could also be declarative. And I think this is a really good headline. Wildfire risk should be considered when planning new developments. It's really straightforward, and you know what you're going to be reading. So here's another, some other ideas for good headlines. Pose a question that your blog post is going to answer. So, will cooking and nutrition education for college students increase food security? Your blog post is going to answer that. And hopefully, yes, right? So another strategy to create a good headline is to connect things or explain relationships, especially things and relationships that people may not have thought of before. And so exploring the relationship between emotions and water issues. Faith Kearns is developing this whole body of writing around emotions and water and emotions and disaster, things like that. And this is a really good headline. So a good lead, your opening, right, for your blog post would provide new information or finding. You might include statistics, response to events, articles, research, your story. And finish strong. Don't forget good visuals. A good conclusion is important, and that can simply be stating why you wrote the blog post and why it matters, if appropriate, a policy recommendation. So the secret sauce for me as a blogger is I include hyperlinks to other people's work. And I also do something that is called aggregation, where I might actually have a blog post that just sort of curates things, articles that I think people should read, podcasts that I think they should listen to, and it basically shares light about other people's work. And people like that, and then when I publish things, they tend to return the favor. So other sort of practical magic is to use good images. Video really will help if you embed a video, which is easy to do in a blog. Make sure your hyperlinks open in a new window so that people don't go away from your blog post. And then use your blogs across social platforms. You share them via Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You can even put that in your bio. And don't feel bad about sharing them more than once, because a blog post, I've had people, I sometimes share blog posts that are 6 months old, right? It doesn't have to just be one use. In fact, you want that to be what we call evergreen, so that you might be able to share it for a good long time. Okay, so crosstown traffic. You could also share your blog on platforms like LinkedIn or Medium. LinkedIn is really good because it's got a publishing platform. A caution for me with doing that is that you want to change it up a little bit. You don't want to just cut and paste. Maybe you want to change out a paragraph and change some of the keywords. Again, use Facebook or Twitter, use Instagram. So here's some tips from some experts. Share your trade secrets. Let people know what you know. They'll appreciate it. Write more simply than you normally would. Use short sentences, bullet points, pull quotes, photos, and charts. Leave white space. Make it easy to scan your article. I'm going to give you another tip. So Word has a tool that you can install called Flesh, and it's Flesch. And those of us who are maybe have backgrounds in education like I do, we know about this. It's a readability scale, and you can very quickly install it on Word. And then what it'll do is when you do your spell and grammar check, it will tell you what grade level you're writing for. It will give you an idea of your average sentence length, and it will also let you know if you're doing passive writing, which we don't want to do. And I really would recommend that if you're not using this, that you use it. And again, it's Flesch, Flesch, super easy. You can Google how to turn on that feature. It's in Word preferences. So now I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to turn it over to Cynthia Kintai, and she's going to share some really good information about how to use the A&R blog system. And then when she's done, we're going to go into an interactive session. So give me a second while I stop sharing. And then Cynthia, you should be able to share your screen.
I think I am. Can everyone see my slides? I think so. Okay. So thanks, Rose. We're gonna go from the sublime to the mundane. I'm gonna talk a little bit about under the hood. I can't recommend more highly to use the A&R blog system. I know that there are other platforms out there, and you can certainly use them, but there are some reasons why you wouldn't want to do that. First of all, the A&R blog system is built to work seamlessly with Site Builder, and it's built to work seamlessly with the new web refresh. It also gives your blog the ucanr.edu domain, and .edu is the gold standard. It's controlled by an organization called EDUCAUSE. You have to make a case to them that you are an actual .edu organization before they will give you that domain, and it's quite difficult to get. You can also think of the blog system as a way to kind of organize or archive your content. For a long time, I've been recommending to people that they use the blog system instead of newsletters. The A&R News blog does this really effectively. They'll send out a news release and then they immediately archive it in their blogs, in the news blog. It's really easy to start. There's a place on your portal, and you can contribute to the advisor blog, the one that's starting out that's part of this educational pipeline. If you want to just do that, you can do it via the survey, and then it's routed to the Stratcom team, and they'll help you get that post going. This is a look at the way the new the main page of the ucanr.edu is going to look. And on these tiles that you see that have headlines as opposed to the healthies, those are all blog posts. And so it's going to be a mixture of the news blog, of Food Observer, and this new advisor educational pipeline blog, so that if you're contributing to this blog, then your stories have the opportunity, or your posts have the opportunity to land up on this front page. And then also there are the focus areas in the new web environment at these top level pages, and you can see over to the right next to the featured news, those are also blog posts that can feed from this same blog. I wanted to talk a little bit about tagging. Tagging makes your content easily searchable within the blog, and when you think about creating tags, you want them to be high level, audience focused, predictable, repeatable, and sustainable. This is it's also, I'm going to scoot back here. It's also helpful if you're starting your own blog to sort of map out the architecture of what you think your tags are going to be. And I think this is especially important if you have a blog where a lot of people are participating. Now, the food blog is an example of how you do not want to do this. This is a tagging system that grew organically, and each contributor is making up their own tags. So you can see that here's the first page of the tags that have the most count, and it goes down for 5 or 6 pages, but easily 3/4 of the tags are only used once. And so that really makes the tagging system not very useful. So if you can think about that architecture, almost think about it like a taxonomy and how you're going to set that up. I know that in the long term, we have plans to tag all A&R content with an agreed upon taxonomy, but that project is several years down the road. So just give some thought to your tagging system before you get started. So the blogs are submitted via a survey, and you received I think everybody got a description of the program, right, Jody? And in a link and an email that was sent out last November. Oh, I also wanted to say something about, Rose said about having your links open in a new window. If you use the A&R blogging system, there's a way when you insert a link to have it open in a new window. You don't need to know the code. It is like target equals blank, but you don't need to know that. It just does it for you if you choose open in a new window. So it makes it easy. And I think that's the best practice also. And I think now I'm handing this back over to Rose, correct?
Okay, yeah.
Stop share.
All right. All right, so I'm going to share my desktop now. Okay, so just a couple of other things really quickly, and then we're going to go into the interactive session. So, Cynthia, I'm still seeing your screen, I think. Maybe not. Hang on. Just give me a second. Okay.
I stopped.
All right, there we go. Okay, so really quickly, I want to point out some resources, okay? And, okay, so there are some resources with this webinar. So they're on the A&R Learning and Development page. So we've got what are the featured content guidelines for A&R if you wanted to write a blog post for the A&R website. And they're really brief guidelines. They'll give you a good idea actually about how to write a blog. And so these are PDF'd up there for you. We also have a PDF of this PowerPoint. We have, I created a narrative notes, which is a kind of a deep dive into blogging. And it's just something, that I did. And it's like 7 or 8 pages. It's pretty substantial. I've put that up there. I also included a bibliography of books that have been really helpful in me and my evolution, starting with A&R, 27 years ago as a 4-H advisor, and then also becoming a Master Gardener advisor, and then a county director and a strategic initiative, person, and now I'm a digital communications advisor. And so this bibliography has some of the books that I've been using to guide my learning process. There's also a description of the offer of assistance, which is that in my role doing digital communications, I'm available to you to be a resource to help you with specific questions. If you need ideas for blogs or social media or communication strategy, if you need editing assistance, just anything you need, I'm available to help you. You can email me, you can DM me on social media, you can text me or call me. And then we also have a document that answers some of the questions that came up very specific technical questions in our first blogging webinar in December about the A&R blogging system. So really quickly, here are some podcasts that I recommend. But again, this is all on the PDF on the L&D site, so you don't have to worry about writing it down. There are some great additional resources on LinkedIn Learning, which used to be Linda. Some of them are free. Some of them you have to pay for. Don't pay for them. Then I also recommend that if you're interested in getting more information about who is using social platforms, who's blogging, to go to the Pew Research Center, to their Internet and Technology portal. They have a ton of information about who's using social media. Okay, so now we're going to go to the interactive session. And so what Cynthia and I want to do is at the statewide conference, a group of us hosted a workshop on this, and we actually analyzed some of the NEFA impacts and blogs and actually have some suggestions, and just want to highlight some ideas about good headlines and things like that. So this headline really caught my eye. I thought it was really good. When storm clouds darkened the skies in southern Louisiana, extension specialists lit up social media. I thought that was a really good headline. And it was basically the focus of the blog post was about making an emergency communication plan. I'm going to jump into this blog post, and then I'm going to show you one that I don't think is as good. Okay, so one of the things that this is a good example of is they're locating this blog post within a larger national thing, which is National Preparedness Month in September. And so they're encouraging people, call to action, think about emergency planning. And what they're doing is they've got this sort of, don't wait, communicate, make an emergency communication plan. And, frankly, they could probably run this for a couple of Septembers with only like changing a sentence or two, right? Like here, you'd have to put, change that to the year. But I thought this was actually a pretty good blog post. And, they included some statistics. They've got hyperlinks to helpful resources. And then they've got some really good related information. So I thought that was actually pretty good blog post, pretty good headline. So then going to the impacts section, which are kind of like our UC delivers, there were some that I thought were good and some that I thought that could be improved. And I think that, let's look at one. So agents of change saving the citrus industry in Puerto Rico. I thought that was actually a pretty good headline, and it encouraged me to jump in and look at that. And I was also interested because obviously it's something we're dealing with in California, right? Citrus greening. And I thought it was good when I got in. It was, see how short it is? It's only just like, 3 paragraphs. And where I thought it fell short a little bit was that it had a really good image for the cover, but there wasn't an image in it. And I thought that I would have been more interested if there had been an image or maybe even a video included in that. And then, hang on, there was one that I wanted you to see, and I want your help in improving this. Cynthia and I are looking for you to help us. University of Tennessee Extension beef cattle programs. Okay, what is that, right? And it was so unclear that I actually clicked on it. Okay, and I'm not even sure that this is even a blog post, but it is an impact statement. So I would invite you looking at this. So really what it's about it's about challenges facing the beef cattle industry in Tennessee. Could you come up with a better headline for that? If you could, jump into the chat section and share it with us. So, Cynthia, do you want to take a...
Yeah, we have a question here in the chat that I'm going to read and attempt to answer, and Rose, you can weigh in. So the question is, what needs to be considered when deciding to start one's own A&R blog relative to writing a post for other existing A&R blogs? I would say it's a matter of, do you have enough time to commit to having your own blog? I know in my personal life, I'm a maker, and I follow a blog that I think is very good. It doesn't necessarily always relate to what I'm interested in, but the thing that I like about it is I know that I can look for it every Wednesday. So there's regularity, there's a very short post, and then sort of a link roundup about what's happening in the industry. So the good thing about your own blog is you have your own voice. You're talking about things that matter to you. You can develop a rapport with your readers, but it is a beast that needs to be fed. So if you think that you can contribute to something on a fairly regular basis, I think having your own blog is great. And then you can just sort of tweak your own blog posts and have them be contributing posts to the other blogs in the system. So Rose, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, Cynthia, I think everything you've said is absolutely spot on. And what I would also suggest that you do is that you participate in our winter school the first week in February, because we'll walk through a series of questions where you get to answer questions about what is your capacity and how would a blog fit into a strategy. And I have to tell you, you could even do. There are some blogs, just like some podcasts, that are becoming somewhat serialized or a limited offering. And so you could potentially do, this is a 6-part blog series or a 12-part blog series, and trial it and see how it is and how it works for you with your schedule. But I agree with Cynthia that that once it takes time to blog. And one of the people that I really admire, who I think has really adopted a consistent blogging practice, is Wendy Powers. And she's doing this, Adventures with A&R blog, and it's really a good blog, and it's really interesting. But she's also not focusing on a single thing. I mean, she's focusing on A&R, but she's not, like, say, just doing avocados or subtropicals, something like that. And so I think that you need to ask yourself some questions. And if you're not sure, another strategy would be to do what happened with the food blog at the Green blog at A&R, which is that a bunch of people got together and sort of did it. And so maybe 2 or 3 people in a related field get together and do a blog, where you're not having to sort of post every week. But I think, I can't tell you how much personally and professionally I have benefited from jumping into a regular blogging practice. So I think that's a good question.
And then we have another question about, can a blog be posted on a monthly basis, or is weekly more ideal? I would say weekly is ideal, but the key thing is regularity. So if you do want to have your own blog and you feel like the most you can commit to is once a month, I would make sure people know you're only posting once a month. So when you start it, say, this is a monthly observation on X, and then at the end, you could also put a little reminder that, the next one will be coming up, watch for the next one in a month. Rose, do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, agree. I also think too that there's some other strategies where if maybe you're going to do a full, robust blog post once a month, but that maybe every other week or maybe even every week, you do something where you find a great video or a couple of articles or a great image that you maybe do a one paragraph caption with a hyperlink. So it's kind of like a presence and a space in your blog post, but it's not a full-on blog post. And something like that you could put together very quickly, and better than, but the length of that citrus one that we just looked at for Puerto Rico, that was like 3 paragraphs. And so that could potentially help you hold space more and give the appearance of a more regular blogging practice.
Yeah, that's a great point. I love those link roundups that are curated by someone who I think has authority in the industry. So they may be pointing out something that I've seen already, but a lot of times it's something I'm completely unaware of, and I really appreciate that. So it doesn't have to be, yes, as Rose said, it doesn't have to be your own material.
Yeah, and in fact, that curation thing was a big part of the communication strategy behind the UC Food Observer, was actually doing that really simple curation, and it also actually built up our following because people really liked having their work shared.
Mm-hmm.
And so it can really benefit you. So I would encourage you to look at that. I want to hear what would your blog be about? Tell us what your blog would be about.
I don't know what this person.
Okay. Well, okay, but if you want to put it in chat,
okay.
We'd love to hear.
Nutrition and health. Oh, that's a really rich area for link curation.
It is. Just even within the University of California, what could be curated from UCSF and, you know, all the different campuses and all the different institutes on health and nutrition. And also, too, I would say that blog post in that area, you're going to get lots of popular interest and probably reach audiences that you might not reach otherwise. And I would also say, too, that that's an area on the internet where there's a lot of like bad information. So if you're, you know, countermanding that with good information, I would think that that would be a really good kind of blog to have. So do you have other questions that you'd like to just ask now, and we'll go into questions and answers.
And we have a shout out here to the Green blog. So thank you for that. That one is a great one. That's a shared blog.
Green blog's one of my favorites.
I also wanted to note that, I think that writing the headline is the hardest part. So I know we just gave you this exercise to rewrite a headline, and we haven't gotten any in, but I think the headline is the hardest thing to write. What do you think, Rose?
I think the headline is the hardest thing to write, and one of the issues is that we often wait till the end to write the headline when we're pressed for time and trying to get, you know, a blog post up by a deadline. And I have to tell you, I actually think our A&R news blog has really good headlines, and they're pretty straightforward generally, but I think that we generally have pretty good headlines. And if you ever want to run a headline idea by me, and I'm sure Cynthia too, we'd be happy to look at them. And I think that the kind of headlines I don't like, though, are the sort of clickbaity headlines that actually don't deliver what they promise. So I think it's important to have it at least be be related to what you're actually blogging about. So
and Pam and Jeanette are also very good with, these are their headlines, and I'm sure they'd be here I am volunteering their services. I'm sure they'd be happy to, if you ran a headline past them, they could give you some tips.
Right. And I agree. I think that they're both excellent at headlines, which is one of the reasons that I'm, sharing the news site, because I think that they're very good at that. What other questions do you have, and what could we do to support your interest in moving forward? Any other questions? Okay. All right. Cynthia, do you have anything that you want to add?
I don't think so. Jody just asked me to remind everyone to fill out the survey.
And then if you're interested, we are noodling, actually doing an interactive where using chat and shared screens where a smaller group might actually construct a blog together. And if you're interested in being a part of that grand experiment, drop me an email. Oh, okay. So from David Lewis, go into branding considerations a little more. How was the food blog transition to an A&R blog, and what were the implications? What should we consider as we start a blog and branding? So Cynthia, if you want to take the first part,
I think you talked about the Food Observer. Are you, David, are you talking about the Food Observer?
Okay. Oh, okay. So, yeah. So the UC Food Observer, I was asked by UCOP to do a special assignment. It was supposed to be 1 year, and it ended up being 3, to create a brand for them called the UC Food Observer, which was based in a blog and then had social accounts, primarily Facebook and Twitter. And so what I did was I actually wrote a communications plan. And if you come to the A&R Winter School, I'll walk you through the process that I learned from doing that about how I created the brand and how I developed strategies and processes to sort of be really consistent. And that involved really articulating in a plan, a short written plan, what it was going to be and what it wasn't going to be. So what kinds of posts I might do. And one of the posts that, I sort of trademarked as part of my work there was something called the wrap, which is the aggregated post where you're sharing links and things like that. And it's not my idea. It actually, I modeled what I was doing after Kevin Roderick, who is a Los Angeles journalist. And he does this around topics that are unique to Los Angeles. And so I wrote this plan. And then I really stayed on message. And when I started sort of doing different kinds of blog posts, I would say, okay, so I'm going to try a long form blog post. And it's going to be a really long piece. And what I would do is I would do a couple of them, and then I would look at the metrics and see how they were doing and what the response to them was. And that helped me get more sort of in my audience. And again, for the brand, when I came back to A&R, then A&R decided that UC Food Observer would be an A&R brand, but it really is in support of it was started in support of the Global Food Initiative, which was UC system-wide. And while I still share that content on the platform and do some of that work, I really now I've adjusted my strategy and I share more A&R content. And so I think, when you're starting a blog and branding, going through the process of writing even a one-page plan and strategy about what you're trying to accomplish, what your frequency of blogging is going to be, what social platforms it's going to feed into. I also developed a list of other bloggers or other platforms that were kind of similar but not entirely the same. But one of them might be like a Reach that was really good at it, and then a couple that were, sort of similar to what I wanted to do. And then I set up like sort of comparative metrics on like my Facebook page so that I could see what I was doing and look at where I was going with my brand. And I don't know if, David, if that's helpful at all. But I would really encourage you to take the like half hour a day and do the winter school. And it would probably be another half hour, 45 minutes of work each day to answer the questions from that morning. Thank you.
And Rose, you didn't change the name of the blog or the URL. It was just the focus made it more inclusive and more focused on A&R content,
yeah,
right?
I didn't change the URL. And I have to tell you, too, that it was a decision by UCOP because they wanted the blog to be from the institution but not institutional. So they didn't tuck it under the UCOP URL. They made it like a standalone WordPress site. And so it kind of looks a little different than UCOP stuff. But if you go to the UCOP website and go to the Global Food Initiative page, the Food Observer is the blog that's featured on that page, and then the UC Food Observer Twitter account is the one that scrolls on that page, and also the Facebook. And so one of the things with that overall brand is that I really wanted to do Instagram, but I didn't have time to do the blog post and Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. And so the lesson I learned from that is that most of us in A&R for our program, a blog is the great basis for a communication strategy and for communicating your programmatic information. But most of us would really benefit from probably trying to do one platform really well, and we don't have to be on every platform. And so that's a way to make all of this less overwhelming, is to say, I'm just going to try to do one thing well. And that's what I have to say about that.
No, I would second that. And also, if you're thinking about going into other platforms, do some research and make sure that the audience base of the people who use that platform match the audience that you're trying to reach. You don't have to be on every platform. So, and there's a lot to choose from. So I would take that into consideration. And also, Rose's blog is not in the blogging system that I'm promoting here today. And so don't use that particular part of her answer as an example, because we have to do extra special things for Rose so that her blog feeds into the system.
Yeah, and I agree. My Victory Grower blog, which I did for years and years and years, was in the A&R system and still is. But the Food Observer was a different deal, and I would really encourage you to use the A&R system and then to publish it, your blogs on other platforms like your LinkedIn account, right? Don't go start your own WordPress website or anything like that. And I think, Cynthia, I'm glad you did it. So David wants to know, can I also help explain, is it a blog training opportunity? Okay, so the Winter School is more broadly about developing a communication strategy, but again, I'm looking at sort of hosting online sometime in February a blog writing workshop for a smaller group of people, where we would actually be online in a sort of screen sharing mode like this, but probably in groups of 5 to 8, and I might even organize it on my own Zoom. but where we could actually write collaboratively and go through that process like a writer's workshop in February. So David, I hope that you'll want to be part of that too. And so do we know if the site builder blog due for an upgrade? Cynthia, I'm going to let you answer that.
So it's a long answer. One of the things that we're looking at overall is the breadth of A&R content and looking for a new content management system that would be at an enterprise level that would replace Site Builder and then that would have other features that plug in like the blog system. That's obviously a long-term process that's going to take several years. So I wouldn't look to that in the short term, but if you have suggestions for the blogging system, like some particular features that you want, you can always shoot them to me or shoot them directly to Dave Krause. I think once they have enough suggestions and they've sort of shopped them around and there's enough interest in them and they have the bandwidth to make some programmatic upgrades under the hood to the blogging system, I think they're always open to that. So that was kind of a non-answer to your question, Brooke, but that's the best answer I have right now.
And it's better than the answer I don't have. So are there any other questions? Okay. Well, we really want to thank you so much for participating today. And again, if you're interested in being part of a writer's workshop in February, send me an email. My email is, I'm going to type it in the screen. And it's really weird because everyone asks me why I have that email. I have that email because it is affiliated with my UC Food Observer accounts. But when you get an email from me, it will say contractor. I'm not a contractor. I'm an A&R cooperative extension advisor, and I've been with UC for like 30 years. So I'm not a contractor. So people ask me all the time, are you a contractor? No, I'm an A&R advisor. So send me and join in the February winter program. Please come back on January 24th to learn all about Instagram from the amazing Dan Macon. And then again on the 31st, we'll be going over Facebook. Thank you, and I hope you have a great day and a wonderful
Rose, I don't know if Peggy, I don't know if you had a question, but I gave you talking ability. So if you had a question because you raised your hand. Oh, the survey. Hi, Peggy. Link. Okay, I need to reset the survey.
Okay, so Peggy Lameau's hand is raised. Okay.
I hear that my survey link isn't full, so I will try to.
Okay. Reset. So, Jody, Peggy should be able to speak, shouldn't she?
She's muted. I see her microphone is muted. More,
Can you unmute it?
Okay. So my question is, how do you? So you went through tagging and you know this huge list of tags that people came up with. But if you're like we're doing a lot of blogs on citrus, and the question is how do you decide what kinds of tags you want to have that are most effective?
Oh, that's a good question. We could do a whole workshop on taxonomy. I think that the tags should be audience focused in a blog. So, and build them like a hierarchy. So you would have like a top level tag and then some sub tags underneath it. If people are interested, we could send out a sample taxonomy that was developed for us by we did a little pilot program with a a company that does just this very thing. And it was in the lawn and garden area, but it might be helpful for people to see what their suggestions were. And that might help you apply it to your particular area. I don't know if people would find that useful. I could certainly send that out.
I think, Cynthia, that would be great. And Peggy, there are a couple of ways that I tackled taxonomy with UC Food Observer, and I constructed the taxonomy for that. And so I identified the categories where the blogs would be classified, and then I did the tagging for that. And if you go to the UC Food Observer website, you can actually pull up that information. And that was a really sort of audience-oriented taxonomy, and it was I think it was actually a really good taxonomy, especially in terms of the general categories of the blog for general audiences. It's really useful. And another thing that I do for my tags is before I sort of finalize tagging for the blog post, I will actually go on Twitter and sort of do a hashtag search to see what the taxonomy looks like on Twitter. And sometimes I get ideas for different tags, and sometimes I go, oh, I don't want to use that tag. And so that's been sort of an additional thing that I've done that's been very helpful. Does that help you at all?
Yes, I mean, at the very beginning or in the middle somewhere, you gave, sort of 5 things that you should use to determine tags. And I mean, that's all great, but even within each one of those levels, there are many different ways you can go. And when I saw the list that you had, I mean, different people think of it in different ways. And so it seems actually really difficult to come up with tags that are high level, reputable, sustainable, predictable, and audience focused. So I don't think it's so easy.
No, I don't think it's easy either, Peggy. And I think that also, again, I think this falls into that the more expertise you have, the more you realize how many more classifications could be used, right? And I think that that sometimes what I did with Food Observer, what I've done is I've gone back to one of the most simple classifications, and I haven't over classified it because I didn't want so many tags. But I think that that's a challenge that we face, and especially on social media, because it's not all at the general level, right? On Twitter and on other social platforms, there are really deep knowledge bases and sort of smaller, more discrete communities where the knowledge base is really, there to use those tags. So I think that, I mean, if there were any ways that you wanted to sort of share ideas with us and give us some sample tags on the side, I would absolutely be willing to look at some of those.
Yeah, taxonomy is hard.
It is hard.
Yeah, it's very hard.
Because it's metadata.
The other thing is governance of your taxonomy. You have to make sure that if you have a contributing blog, that people are using the taxonomy that you set up, or it gets out of control.
Right. Right. So I think but Peggy, these are really good things to think about on the front end. So I think that's good stuff. So are there any more questions? Okay. So no open questions. So I think it's a wrap. Thank you again for joining us, and have a terrific day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Oh, yes, the winter school webinars will be recorded. Yes. Thanks again.